Okay, so well, I represent the Institute of Urban Excellence. We are based in The Hague, in the Netherlands, and we define ourselves as knowledge brokers in the field of urban planning. We work in three pillars: research, practice, and academy. And our four themes are natural and built environment, inclusivity and representation, resilience and adaptation, and finally governance and financing. Some of the activities that we do is conducting applied research, promote knowledge transfer and co-creations, provide capacity building and technical assistance, and broaden the debate around transitional needs for sustainable cities. So today we are going to we prepared several international webinars, and today is about soil. So we have a very good top professionals in the field. They are going to share with us their work related to soil aspects in relation to the planning processes from different perspectives. We are honored to have the delegation from two regions of the world: from South America, Jorge Albuja from Ecuador, Carolina Rojas from Chile, and from Europe, we have Sofia Armpara from Greece and Yoann Clouet from France. I will share with you the agenda. We will start with Yoann, who will introduce the topic, followed by Sofia, who will present the research of the EU-funded project Space. Then we will hear from Carolina and her experience in the urban wetlands in law in Chile, followed by Jorge, who will present his work on seismic response in Quito. I would like to ask you to please either write your questions in the chat or save them for the Q&A section, so we will have after the presentations. And finally, we would like to know a little bit more about all the attendance. So we want to hear from you. So we have prepared a brief interactive activity using a Miro tool. So with that, I will give the floor to my colleague Yoann Clouet. He's originally from France, but is now based in the Netherlands. He's my colleague at the Institute. He is an EU regional and urban policy expert, and currently he's a project manager at the Institute for Urban Excellence. He will present an introduction to soil as a key resource for sustainable urban development and the existing international efforts to promote its sustainable management. The floor is yours, Yoann.
Thank you. Thank you, Tannya. Hi. So yes, my name is Yoann. I will discuss, as Tannya said, the sort of the perspective how soil is recognized as a resource in global frameworks, mostly the UN, and how this is translated or not into the planning practice. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Tannya. So the assumption is that for decades, not just an assumption, it's a reality, that the soil resource has been under pressure. And the blame has been laid for quite some time on agriculture, because farmers, we see them as, it's very visible that they use water resources, so they dry up the soil, so they contribute to groundwater depletion. But actually, this completely overlooks the urban responsibility and soil sealing due to urbanization and densification. And also now I think there is a narrative that is a bit more prominent on the impacts of climate change on soil. But in the 80s already, different United Nations institutions have recognized the role of soil. So in 81, the FAO adopted the World Soil Charter and highlighted the soil in its role in supporting sustainable development. A year later, the UNEP and with the World Soils Policy called for action to avoid erosion, to avoid soil pollution, and to diminish fertility loss. This is a very agricultural perspective on soil, but it has been a bit more open in the last decade, with the FAO really recognizing the role of soil as providing a number of ecosystem services, not just crop production, and highlight also the issue of limited adoption of sustainable soil management, specifically in urban areas. If you can go to the next slide, please, Tannya. So when we talk about soil function, we refer basically to the different services that soil can provide to both human and non-human, because soil in effect is a living organism that has a number of benefits. It has a carrying capacity, for instance, it contains water that we are able to consume. It has provision capacity. If we think of crop production, it's a very classical way of seeing the service provided by soil as crop production, but it also has regulation capacity, for instance, thermal regulation, especially in cities where soil covered by vegetation has the capacity to absorb urban heat, for instance, and mitigate urban heat island effect. And soil also is part of landscape, so it also has cultural values. So in effect, this is recognized now for the past 15 years, really, that soil is a living organism that provides those ecosystem services, and this needs to be protected. If you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So this the essential function that soil can provide is recognized, and the actual adoption, again, as the FAO has noted, of sustainable soil management practices remains completely limited, and there is a clear disconnect between those very high-level policies and global framework and their actual implementation at sort of national level, and then into the practical land use planning, let's say. If we can go to cities specifically, what soil can provide in cities. So it provides key ecosystem services that can help the development of sustainable cities. If we think of carbon sequestration, if we think of water purification, if we think of flood regulation, if we think as they provide an habitat for biodiversity, and again as climate regulation. But this is also where, in effect, soil has the most pressures. If you can go to the next slide, Tannya. The number of human pressures that have a direct impact both on the quantity of soil, so how much soil is available, how much soil is not sealed, also on its quality, what are the different, its biochemical properties, its capacity to deliver those ecosystem services, is heavily impacted by human activities concentrated in cities, and also climate change, because the effects of climate change are even higher in very dense urban areas. So the issue comes from the fact that soil is very often only seen purely as a surface, whereas it is a 3D volume. It is a living organism, not just a thin layer. And it suffers from compaction of soil because of pressures, like physical pressures. It suffers on pollution from human activities, industrial activities that that can lead to a decrease in its ability to live as an organism. That then leads to poorer soil, that may also lead to landslides, to erosion because of less vegetation, less bioorganism living in it. So in the end, this all affects biodiversity in cities and the capacity in general of soil to provide a number of ecosystem services. But we do see a trend, if you can go to the next slide, in urban planning starting to address those issues with urban planning, integrating some of the sort of the broader perspective of ecosystem services under which soil can fall. So there is a growing awareness of soil function in the urban context. There is a growing awareness of urban planning practices that take account of soil. If we think of a number of nature-based solutions that helps and promote or enhance soil health, but there is still limited implementation guideline, and it's very often very fragmented approach. So in essence, yes, urban planning needs to account for soil and its role in the socio-ecological system of cities, but there is also a need for urban planners to understand and to receive information about soil-to-soil data from soil science, and how can these be integrated then into the different planning tools that you use as an urban planner, and regulations also in policy context that promotes the integration of those soil consideration into the planning practice, notably through cross-sector collaboration. If you can go to the next slide. And we do see, okay, there is this implementation gap, but we do see interesting approaches that we will in the end be addressing today with Sofia, looking at this knowledge integration perspective through a research project with Jorge, looking at more of a functional approach of how you do deal with soil as a resource, but also as the material on which the city is built, especially in area under seismic constraint. And then Carolina will present more of a regulatory approach to how you can protect soil. There are a number of existing planning framework that integrate soil conservation. In the UK, soil is mentioned, and urban planning should promote soil conservation. In the US, it's partly mentioned. This is something that we find very interesting here at iUE, and we want to discuss with you in the interactive session, understanding how this is covered or not in your planning framework. So this is part of the interactive session later. I will very quickly focus on the European Union framework. If you can go to the next slide, Tannya, because this is where we are based, and this is also a region of the world where some efforts, like policy efforts, have been made in the last decade to really promote soil health. So there is a very clear overarching objective of healthy soil by 2050 as part of a goal for climate neutrality in 2050. That is supported by research and innovation funding, with funding directing at the establishment of 100 living labs promoting soil health across Europe. So looking also at the development of knowledge, integration of knowledge into planning. And there are also regulatory changes in Europe with a soon to be adopted soil monitoring law, which will mandate the countries in Europe to adopt sustainable soil management guidelines that will for sure have a direct impact on the way the territories are planned in the end. And there is a number of indicators that are also being reformed through this law, specifically to ensure that more focus is given to soil sealing, which is a bit misunderstood or there is a lack of monitoring on the specific indicator, which is very relevant for sustainable urban development. If you can go to the next slide. If you want to read more about the topic, this is my self-promotion. I wrote a short brief on the topic. You can scan this. It's on our website. This is what I used as a base for this presentation. And thank you. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, or we can discuss them as part of the question and answer session.
Thank you, Yoann. Yes, please put it in the chat, and then we can discuss later. Now I will give the floor to Sofia. Sofia is originally from Greece, but also based in the Netherlands. She has a PhD from the Roma Tre University, and currently she is a postdoc in TU Delft. And she's part of the research group of SPADES, the project that Yoann mentioned before, which is called for the spatial planning and design with soil. It's a EU-funded project aiming to soil inclusivity in planning strategies that combat soil degradation and enhance ecosystem resilience. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to let you share, Sophie.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tannya, and for the introduction, and thank you for having me here. I'm going to present a part of a research from the EU Horizon Spades project, as Tannya mentioned, which is about spatial planning and design with soil. This is part of this bigger project, and we're going to present a piece of the research that we've been conducting together with Talia from the Institute of Urban Excellence and Laura Thomas from TU Delft, but we're a bigger, way bigger group, and Tannya and Yoann are also part of it. And today I'm going to present, we're going to show you examples from our research, soil as a guiding principle in planning and design, also examples that show that soil has not been a guiding principle in planning and design through history. So what is the SPADES project and what is its objective? I'm going to give a short overview about that. Some things are the similar line with what Yoann presented. So what we are aiming with this project of SPADES is seeing soil as not only a technical constraint, but as an integrative living system with ecological, cultural, and infrastructural dimension. So going beyond looking at its technically, but as an element that can influence how we organize space, resources, community life, and human, non-human agents. So beyond that, we are also having, I think, a very interesting experiment on boundary spanning and trying to work across different disciplines and sectors, so bridging differences across institutional, disciplinary, professional, and cultural boundaries. And we're seeing that all these different elements of soil require very different knowledge expertises, that when we arrive at the point of spatial planning and design have to be combined from, for example, landscape ecology, environmental planning, but also geology, resource economics, energy policies are involved in what has to do with planning and design with soil. The approach that we're having in Spades is looking both at the urbanization context, so ranging from the rural, the peri-urban, and the urban setting, looking across different landscapes and urbanization settings, but also looking at soil through its quality, so the chemical and biological and physical qualities of the soil, its quantity, so for example, no land take, on the availability of land and soil, but also soil performance, which would involve more the soil functions and ecosystem services approach. As I said, this is a very big EU-funded Horizon project that involves partners across different institutes, universities, research institutes, NGOs are involved, as well as policymakers and expert organizations. And we're looking at different case studies, the ones that you see on the map, that range from long-term strategies, urban and peri-urban settings, and rural landscapes. Also, these countries that we're looking at have a different planning culture, so we take that also into account. So which is the different planning setting that we are operating within, from more a land use management approach to regional economic development to a more urbanism approach to planning. It is important to look at soil when we're talking about integration of spatial planning and design with soil. It is important to look at it through a historical perspective, and this is what we're starting to develop now, like looking at how soil has been perceived throughout different time periods, where we can see, for example, that at times of industrial revolution or modernist movement, soil has been perceived more as an extractive resource or as a background material, a ground to which on top of which we laid out urban planning plans. But recently we have been considering soil more as an integrative design element, or an ecological asset. Also, soil is a cultural agent and has been since a very long historic times an integrative element into cultural landscape shaping. So I think it is important to look at all these phases. And for example, we started looking at the very old prehistoric, pre-industrial phases, so phases when soil was still a foundation of settlement, farming, and culture. And this is a plan of Maya civilization of, excuses for the pronunciation, Chunchumil in Mexico, where that shows that soil was an integrative part of development, part of the culture, but also of a collective knowledge of a community that would place the land use in the plan on the left, actually not where the hard bedrock lies, but where the soil is more suitable for development. The same also for the divergent land use strategy. So depending on upland or lowland areas, they would allocate different agriculture uses from main agriculture domain lying on the lowlands, and then the upland areas having more precision agriculture or container gardening. So we see that soil used to be a more integrative and maybe collective cultural element of the shaping of communities. What happened in the industrial and the modern planning approach then completely saw soil as an extractive, as an element as a resource and an extractive element. So we have examples across the world, but I think this is a very striking one about what happened in Johannesburg, the city of gold, and we can, until today, we have to deal with the traces of historic extraction that intercept within the city's development and ecological systems. This, of course, I guess most of you will know very well about modernist planning that treated almost completely, we could say, neglected soil and opted for a uniform design that would not take into any consideration soil properties or allocation of uses based on soil functions and performances. And these are the very famous examples of Villa Dios and the Plan of Brasilia from Oscar Niemeyer and Lucio Costa. With the environmental movement and design with nature, development location per soil permeability started being an important factor. This was, I think, a turning point from when we started considering more integrative the soil into how it is actually a shaping force for design. So how the floodways and the primary recharge soils can become areas that would be the guiding lines for a more ecological planning. That also then reflected, this is a Dutch example from one of the, let's say, turning points to a more landscape-based urbanism. It's in an area near Schiedam, near the city of Rotterdam, where there was a shift from modernist planning to including soil and town planning. So they hired this town planner to actually develop a soil survey for the newly developed area that would actually then allocate the urban development into the firm soils and link the hydrological infrastructure better with the city's infrastructure. So this was a turning point for the Dutch context. And where we are now, we are, I hope, and we hope that we are at the turning point where we see soil as an ecological asset that is part of a climate adaptive living infrastructure. We're talking about sponge cities, about nature-based solutions, about a living infrastructure, and also a cultural heritage element of soil. So within that frame, we're also working with the 17 pilot case studies that we have at the Spades project across Europe. And we're trying to ask them questions to understand what their planning system is, with what planning concepts they are working with, and what planning concepts might be suitable for their context, and also informative to integrate into a more soil inclusive approach. So in our group, we divided these different planning concepts. So we can see resilient and adaptive planning, future-oriented, large-scale planning and design, social and equity-oriented planning, new urbanism. And we ask the pilot case studies. We have a booklet that we send to them, and we ask them to score how much familiar they are with these concepts and how much soil integrated or soil inclusive these concepts are for them. So this is an iterative process that we're still on the making with the pilot projects. We're also trying to understand where they are located, what is their landscape setting, so what type of city, if it's an urban setting it is, what type of landscape elements they have, is it a river valley, etc. So this is an example of all the questionnaires they have to fill in, and we're still at the phase where we're waiting for them to get the answers and then rework based on that. Also, we zoom in into scale. So we look also at the urban typologies or also rural typologies. So how the urban setting or a rural setting is shaped. Is it a more grid-shaped, a modernist setting? So to link it also to the examples I was showing before, and what is the ratio between the sealed and the unsealed surface that we have here? So if we understand also the context and along with the historical time that this emerged, we can then eventually also reconfigure these typologies and rethink them in a more soil inclusive way. So this is what they have to fill in also for the spatial typologies. again, we're at the stage where we're waiting for them to give us their responses and their feedback. And because, of course, I mentioned this is a small piece of a bigger research, we're trying to bring this all together and integrate this all together in a sort of a very a tool that would bring together all the different elements of this project. So this is, we call it the navigator. So basically spatial planners and designers or also soil experts that are trying to find ways that they could deal with design in a more soil inclusive way can insert, this is a digital tool that they can insert their entry point based on a soil challenge or ambition, for example, erosion, and then they get examples, soil policy instrument, concepts, best practices, or the same, they have an inspiration project in mind, for example, Room for the River, and a very well-known Dutch project, they insert it and they get then similar examples, or they have a very specific planning challenge or ambition. For example, no land take, they try to find examples and best practices on how to work with that. So yes, we are at the first year of this project, so we have a long way to go. But this was a short example of what we are doing and how we're working. I don't know if Tannya, you have anything to add to this, because yeah, you are the main
No, it was super
developer
thorough.
of this.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Okay, so if not, yeah, thank you, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Sofia. And if anyone is interested in the project, I have to leave the website as spatesforsoils.au, so you can find more of the deliverables and of this project. So now I will present Carolina. Carolina is a very well-renowned researcher from Chile. She has a PhD in geography. She's a deputy director of research and development at the Institute of Urban and Territorial Studies at Pontifical University of Chile. Her research focuses on urban sustainability and mobility, particularly the interaction between people, urbanization, and natural ecosystems. She is one of the creators of the Chile's urban wetland law, Ley de Humedales Urbanos, enacted in 2020, which aims to protect and manage wetlands within urban areas. This is a pioneer law that seeks to halt indiscriminate real estate development on wetlands and integrate them into urban planning. I will stop sharing and we leave it to you, Carolina.
Okay, Tannya, thank you for the invitation. Very interesting, the presentation. No, very nice. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you to be here. Today I will be talking about my research of urban wetland, and also how the research supports the recent law of urban wetland in Chile. Next, please. So how the story starts, what happened in Latin America? You could next, because it's a animation. In the photo, you can see the case from Argentina. This is a very big intervention of wetland along the Luján River. And also that example illustrates the increasing pressure that urban development on wetland all across the Latin America. So that means that our regulatory framework are often weak or poorly enforced. In fact, if you read the research of Darat and colleagues, you can see that Latin America lead globally the wetland laws with 59%. Next, please. Well, that data are critical. It guiding our conservation policy. Why do we focus in urban wetland? Because urban wetland provide essential ecosystem services that you can see, for example, control flood regulation, water purification, carbon storage, improve air quality, and biodiversity. Despite this, they are often not considered in urban planning or in infrastructure investment decision, leading to their degradation or disappearance. Next, please. Other key idea for Chile is our country is a coastal country with over 4,000 kilometers of coastline. Most of the major cities are in coastal area, for example, Zapallar and Viña del Mar. And our city located near estuaries and wetland, and also the country is very vulnerable for flooding or some socio-natural risks related to climate change. So wetland conservation is a critical policy issue. Next, please. The problem in Chile that the cities growing over wetland. In that maps, you can see both two cities, La Serena and Valdivia. They are increasing the urban expansion over the wetland, and that urban growth is planned by instrument. Is allow the increasing of urbanization in this fragile ecosystem. So the law allow that situation. Next, please. Here you can see some example of how urban expansion has impacted wetland in Chile. Some photos are from Valdivia, the first one. Second is Concepción. The third is Los Molles. It's a coastal town in our country, in my country. And the last one is La Serena. So you can see the grow over the dune, over the estuary, over urban wetland. That is for speculative urban development and increase the wetland degradation. So in response to this, next one. Yeah, this is the name of the city. In response to this, it also is growing the conflict between social environmental organization with the government, with private sector. Chile started the Urban Wetland Protection Law in 2016 until 2020. It's a pioneer legal framework in Latin America. This law allows municipalities, I don't know in Netherlands how is the municipalities, it's the local government, to declare and protect wetland located within urban boundaries. The urban boundaries are defined by the urban instrument, the urban planning. So that law allow incorporate the wetland, the urban wetland declared in the urban planning instrument. Also, the law stipulates that any urban project like houses or highway or bridge to be developed in the wetland or in its surrounding area must be undergo an environmental impact assessment. I have the honor of helping as a scientific advisor during the legislative process, contributed evidence, science evidence on the ecological, social, and spatial value of wetland in urban setting. Next one. For example, one of the key evidence that I supported that the law was discussed in the Congress is the case of Roquán and Dalian wetland, located in Concepción in the south of Chile. Over the last 20 years, this wetland has lost 10% of its area due to the urban expansion. Even under existing regulation, the urban planning instrument, the protection show a potential loss of 32%. You can see in the map the regulation. For example, this wetland has to be becoming a mixed use residential area, in a transport area, also in an industrial area and commercial area. Just a short part of the wetland, it could be become a park. So that is the situation with the urban planning. So that case provide evidence, a concrete evidence that how current planning framework enable ecosystem loss and highlighted the need for a stronger legal instrument. Next one. Other evidence that I was present in the Senate was the same case study and a study about the potential flood mitigation of this wetland. You can see the assessment of the role in flood mitigation, and in future urban growth scenario has planned by the urban planning, Rowan and Dalian act as a natural buffer, absorbing rainfall and reduce its flow risk in more than 10%. Also, we estimate the flow damage in more than $55 million, and also estimate the affected home and affected population. For example, if that wetland urbanized, the affected population increased in more than 6%, and the homes affected in more than 8%. So with that research, we prove that the role of the wetland in the flooding mitigation and also in the ecology restoration, and also the role in the economic reconstruction. Next, please. Yeah, $55 million was, it could be saved for the role of wetland. Well, scientific evidence play a crucial role in defending public interest in the face of competing agendas. So urban wetland enjoy a strong support for civil society, but often face resistance from real estate and infrastructure private sector. In Chile, for example, now the ongoing housing crisis has led some to argue that wetland protection limits development, and that while robust scientific data about biodiversity, ecosystem service, and cost-benefit trade-off is essential for informed policymaking. These photos you can see was taken when we reached a milestone, the declaration of 100 urban wetlands under the new law. The photo you can see the Ministry of Environment and the senator that lead the law. It was a very great result of the new framework. Next, please. As of 2025, more than 100 urban wetlands had been officially declared in Chile, covering nearly more than 13,000 hectares. This is a significant milestone in environmental policy implementation in Latin America, and the law is an example for other countries like Colombia or Peru, even Mexico. Next, please. This is the platform for the Ministry of Environment, and you can see how the monitoring of the declaration is going. So most declaration has been initiated by municipality. For example, some of the complex situation that is that the municipality have not the technical support or have not the resources to declare the wetland, but the evidence showed is completely different. So municipality lead the urban declaration in compared with the central government. Also, this decentralized governance shows strong territorial awareness and commitment. Yeah, and also it's very interesting that the Santiago metropolitan area lead in surveys are declared, and the Santiago metropolitan area is the most urbanized area in the country. So next, please. And what we do know now after the declaration of wetland, the declaration of urban wetland. Well, we have to think about what solution to propose for declared wetland. So here, what China is doing with the sponge city can be a great example. So, for example, this is the Chichi wetland was restored and integrated into the urban fabric through the strategy of protective development, combined conservation, flood control, ecotourism, and environmental education. That initiative of nature-based solution could be a model of urban sustainability for our country. It could be an example for increase the green and blue infrastructure in our cities. Next, please. So the case on the advance of China with the sponge city demonstrate that wetland, when protected and designed, is a part of the city, can become access for sustainable urban transformation, and is not an obstacle to urban development. For that, inspired by Sponge City, we and my team, we are working on nature-based solution proposal in the Bio region, specifically in 3 coastal cities, Talcahuano, Hualpén, and Concepción. And the proposal aims to integrate water-sensitive urban design, reduce flow risks, and restore degraded wetland system. And we try to show to the mayor of city that it could be a great way of solution to the conflict now. Next, please. So with this intervention, we modeling the effects on reduce of flow risk. And you can see in the map, with our project, we helped to reduce a flow area by more than 200 hectares. And this is proof that the conservation and restoration of the wetland is not just a matter of biodiversity, it's also a cost-effective strategy for climate adaptation, for community engagement, and disaster risk reduction. And next. So, well, I'm talking about Chile, but the problem is in all Latin American countries. Also, we have many public policy challenges. For example, we need to fully integrate wetland into our urban planning. Chile could be a great example. Legal framework must be updated. Also, Chile could be an example. In fact, Peru is working now in their urban law, in the urban wetland law. Also, we need funding. We need funding for conservation, for restoration, and for nature-based solution projects. And public participation is essential. So we need to improve the environmental education and community engagement. Next, please. To the end, I would like to show you, to share my last book, is Urban Wetland in Latin America. In that book, you can see some example and experience from across the region. That experience are very positive because it's related with the initiative of protection, also restoration, innovation, and community engagement. So we think, well, I think, and my team think, that with a strong case of wetland as very important to become our city more sustainable and more water sensitive. So thank you very much. So if you need more information, feel free to contact me. This is my email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolina. It was very inspiring. I will now give the floor to Jorge Albuja Sánchez. He's Ecuadorian. He represents my country. He holds a PhD in engineering science from the University of Ferrara, Italy, and he is currently the Dean of the Faculty of Habitat and Infrastructure and Creativity of the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Ecuador. He will present his exploration on geotechnical characterization of volcanic and alluvial deposits and their role in seismic amplifications. I will stop sharing and let you share, Jorge.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for being here. I haven't practiced English in a while, so I'll try to be as clear as possible. Sorry if I may make any mistake. I will talk about the local site seismic response of Quito, which is located in an inter-Andean valley, and how this relates to urban planning and the use of soil in a city. I will first talk about an introduction, the tectonic and seismotectonic framework of Quito, the experimental setup that we use to characterize all the soils in Quito, then the dynamic properties of soil, the local seismic response, and some final remarks and future research related to urban planning. This will take 15 minutes. So Quito is the capital city of Ecuador in South America. It's here. And Ecuador is a seismic country. These are some images of the 2016 earthquake that struck the coastal zone of Ecuador. And it was, as you can see, a huge earthquake with very big effects. Related to Quito, Quito is in an inter-Andean valley between two mountain ranges. And here you can see it's divided into zones. A north subbasin and a south Machangara subbasin. And this is important because the types of soil and the dynamic response of soils are different in the north and in south. So we will talk about the south of Quito because the soils in south of Quito are very weak, and the effects on constructions in the south of Quito is really bad. There are lots of settlements, lots of constructions falling. So we will try to analyze all these effects in the south of Quito. Here's a picture of our city, and you can see it's surrounded by mountains and volcanoes. And here's also another picture of Quito and how it's surrounded by extinct and active volcanoes. All these blue and yellow zones that surround Quito are volcanoes. And it's interesting what Alexander von Humboldt said over 200 years ago, that the Ecuadorians are rare and unique because they live peacefully in the midst of cracking volcanoes, live poor in the midst of incomparable riches, and rejoice with sad music. So it's really interesting how we live in a very active zone. Here's the South Machangara Basin that we will talk about. And previously, there has been some attempts to characterize the zone, but there has not been funding to this, and the zones are very weak, very, very poor. So here's another image of Ecuador and how it's surrounded by all these plates, the Nazca plate, the South American plate, the North Andean block, and Quito is right here in all these plates or seismic plates. And here's another picture of Quito, how is all these plates and these faults affect Quito. Another image of all the plates that affect Quito. And some of the previous zonation that have been made, and you can see they're not very clear. For this reason, the municipality of Quito give us funding of over $300,000 to perform an experimental setup to characterize the soils and see how they are working against an earthquake. So we perform all these are civil engineering tests, standard penetration tests, some recovery of samples, some laboratory tests, and some dynamic property tests. So this is south of Quito. We placed 22 boreholes. This is the test that we perform: the standard penetration test, diameter test, and cone penetration tests in each of these points to see the mechanical properties of the soil. This is the 22 boreholes, and this is the machine that we use to obtain samples. So with all these tests, we found a lot of data, but we try to group it by zones. So we start grouping all the properties of the soil by zones, and at the end, we found like 7 different zones. This is a bit of the soil that we recovered from 0 to 30 meters, and we also try to group it by stratigraphic zones. This is a bit of the tubes that we obtained, the soil samples. And with this field testing, we proceed with the laboratory testing. We perform over 2,700 laboratory tests with sieving, plasticity, water content, density, organic content, and resistant properties or physical and mechanical properties of the soil. With this, we also performed different zones of the plasticity, of the water content, of the settlements that these properties have, the soil properties have in laboratory. This is a bit of the sieving test, how we try to group it by zones, and the physico-mechanical properties that we also performed in laboratory. This is like an introduction to what we did. We performed these geotechnical profiles of the city to see how the different layers of soil were deposited in Quito. And you can see here how this matches the zones. No? For example, this is one zone, this is another zone of organic soils. No? So we did that along Quito or across Quito, and we find the different zones. And here are a bit the zones that we found, 7, 8 different zones with the geotechnical properties of the soil. As I said before, these zones are very weak, and these are the settlements that presented these houses, for example. And this is all over south of Quito. So this is a big problem because the municipality is worried if an earthquake reaches Quito, what can happen. So we performed these dynamic tests to obtain this seismic response of the soil. And this basically is the shear modulus of the soil against the damping that will have the soil against an earthquake. This is performed with resonant column equipment, which is equipment that we give a torsional excitation to the soil, simulating an earthquake, and we see how it responds to the earthquake. With that, we obtain these curves for each of the zones in Quito. This is a bit of all the properties that we obtained, and we put it in zones. So after that, we try to see the local seismic response of the soil. For that, we need to locate the rock basement. And this is very interesting because you can see, this is a research made in 2022, that the north of Quito, the basement is at 250 meters, but in the south of Quito, the rock basement is in over a 1 kilometer depth. This will have a very extreme response against an earthquake because it will amplify the earthquake in this kilometer of soil. Here you can see a bit better how the basement is located, north of Quito and the south of Quito. So south of Quito was previously a wetland, was with a lot of lagoons and soft soils deposits, and it makes sense why it has a different response in this part of the city. So we perform the dynamic models. We put it in a software which is called Deep Soil, and we simulate the earthquake that is expected in Quito, which is a 5.7 to 6.6 magnitude earthquake. With this spectra, we obtained the response of the soil, and we finally have this is the period and the frequency expected in the response of the soil. We obtained this map. This map is the amplification factor that we will have during an earthquake to Quito. So, for example, these zones will have a huge amplification factor of 7, and these zones between 1 and 3. So these zones, which are red, are the worst zones to build, and will have the worst effects when an earthquake reaches Quito. So this is a bit a map that we compiled between the dynamic properties and physical mechanical properties of the soil. So we have all these red zones are the worst zones to build. And well, here's a bit a better map. You can see at 2 meters depth and 4 meters depth how these zones are the worst to build. And we matched this map with a recent publication of last year that exemplifies these are the quality of life in the neighborhoods in the south of Quito. So you can see the red zone that we found of the worst zones to build and will have the worst effect in an earthquake are also the zones with the worst quality of life in Quito, or the poorest zones in Quito. And it also matches with the time that takes people to walk to reach a public transportation system or to reach a green area, for example. And this also matches with the public services. All these red zones have no or very poor public services, water, electricity. So there's a direct correlation between the quality of the soil, the effect of the soil in an earthquake, and the quality of life that people have in these zones. And this is what we're currently working on. So that's it. I hope it was interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jorge. I really appreciate this. It's very interesting to know that and sad because the most vulnerable are the ones who are going to suffer in the event of an earthquake in Quito. I'm going to pass now to the questions and answer. Do you have any question and some or comment? Please go ahead. Rolf, go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Jorge, thank you for your speech. Was really interesting. And now connected to the comment of Tannya, I believe that this kind of studies have an impact on obviously the cost of the ground, and may also have an impact on issues like gentrification and on speculation on soil. And in Latin America, we know perfectly, I grew up in Bolivia, how easy this can distort, let's say, communities. And I don't know what is the impact of your study in the case of Quito.
Thank you for the comment and the question. And we are trying to relate all this gentrification and the cost of soil with this study, because we know that the south of Quito, the cost of soil is much less than the north of Quito, for example. But there are no studies that relate it, and there are no studies that find the effects of the quality of soil with the densification of the city, because the city is expanding to the south because it is cheaper. But there are no current studies, so we are working on that. I hope that we can publish the results between this year and the next year.
Yes, I know in Caracas they have been doing similar studies on the barrios, on the hills that are actually much more difficult to access, and for obvious reasons cheaper, and people who have no means, they go and build their houses there, but they are more vulnerable because this is where the landslides happen and where the soil is actually less solid, so landslides happen more easily. But these studies have been resolved on the basis of existing landslides. On the other hand, in Quito, you don't have earthquakes every year or every, I don't know, 10 years. So it's more difficult to base these studies like you have done on a practical side, or also to complement them with other studies, because obviously this is one study, and you will need also more data to validate what you have discovered.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for that. Yes, we've seen that in South American cities, these types of studies have been made, but in our local context in Quito, no. So we need to find more data and more studies to validate all this information. But yes, hopefully next year we will have all the info and we can share it. Thanks for the info also.
Thank you, Rolf. Thank you, Jorge. Do we have another question in the audience? Miri, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all of three, for your presentation. Are really, really interesting. I would also like to ask something to Jorge. He's my boss, so I will to ask something. In fact, you are right. There are not studies that relate or close to have this study about soil and urban planning. Unfortunately, we just have this, how to say it, approach, threats about soil, but not this kind of studies that are really deep and is kind of more detailing about the threat, in fact. So my first question will be, how do you think this could escalate to decision makers? How it is the best way to leave the sphere of academia or pretty much just research and escalate to decision makers?
Thanks, Miriam, for the question. This will directly escalate to decision makers and to authorities, because this was funded by the municipality of Quito. They gave us over $300,000 to perform this study. This type of studies are needs a lot of money, and we presented the preliminary results to the municipality. And when we finish the study, that will be this year, there are planned several meetings with different sectors of the municipality, because there's the secretary of risks that we have the main contact, and also with the urban planning policies department, that they are also or have knowledge of this study. So I believe this will have a huge impact on the decision makers and to the future of the city, because if we know that there are zones that will take a huge impact on an earthquake, you can't build a huge construction there, or if you build it, it has to be with all the technical and the correct procedures to make this construction safe. So I think it will have a huge impact.
Thank you, Miri. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Thanks. We can have one more question before we go to the Mariana. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for all of your presentations. I have a question for Carolina. So I am from Argentina myself, so I know very well the case you showed from the Luján River. And I know that in these sort of cases, the power of developers is usually very, very high. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how in the development of Chile's legislation, the one you mentioned, how you dealt with this sector, so to speak, with in relation to urban wetlands. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. No, it's a very good question. Always Argentinian ask me the same because when we started to planning the legislation, we inspired in the Argentinian case and in the discussion of their urban wetland law or wetland law, something like that. Well, every public policy have a specific time and themes and a specific sense. When the start of the discussion of legislation, we have a lot of consensus of environmental protection. Now it's completely different. That time with this time is completely different. And also I think we have a great support because Chile in 2020 was the organizer of COP25 of climate change COP. And in that time the Ministry of Environment have very compromised with the legislation, and also the Congress. And I think it was a very consensus legislation. We are very surprised for that. They say, "Oh, what happened with the urban developer?" So the construction sector, why they say nothing? Because for that, because for the time, for the situation of the country, for the conscious also. But now it's very different. Huh? But now it's very different after more than 100 declaration. We have a lot of conflict with the housing project, and now the Congress started to push and try to change the law, and including some changes to allow more urban project, for example, if related with social housing. If you have to build social housing, maybe the law could be changed this year or next year. But I think it's a balance between time, awareness, and political time.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Carolina. Now we're going to go to a very brief interactive session. So first of all, we want you to please take one dot and put like this, the country that you are from or the region that you are from, so we can have like a more understanding of where are you located right now, because we had, as I said before, we had the registration from many regions in the world, so we want to know where you are located. After would you do that, then we have, and another thing, important thing, is that this Miro board will be open, so you can keep working on it. But we would like to, in the last minutes that we will have here, we want your input of soil science and spatial planning in your region. So for your reason, it looks very, very big, but you don't have to go through them. But for your reference, we have like we adopted from the framework of the SPADES project, soil quality, soil quantity, and soil performance. And we saw today from different perspectives, we have to face different challenges and also study different aspects of soil. And we want to know if you are either a planner, a soil scientist, a researcher, you are from an academia, or maybe a student, or the local government. Take one post-it, and please let us know that if you in your region are soil aspect incorporated into the planning's processes. If yes, please explain how, and also consider both bottom-up initiatives and top-down regulation if that is the case. If you can please provide us some web links. The purpose of this is to create a network of people who is interested in soil science into spatial planning, so we can connect with each other. So I think we can start closing. Again, if you can keep working on this, we will be glad to leave this Miro open, so you can keep contributing. Within the space project that we are working on, we have prepared survey that we will love if you can contribute to. It's in the Miro, the website is in the Miro here, and also you can scan the QR code. Since you are practitioners and researchers in the field, we would like your expertise to find out more what is happening in the soil matters in your region and from your research. And of course, start building a network in our case, because there's a very, let's say, fairly big network in Europe, but internationally not so much. So one of the institute's aims is that to bring all international practitioners to the table. So therefore, that's why this is an international webinar, and we had this time representatives from South America, but we also would like to have from other regions, and we will organize other regions. And with that, I will thank you all for joining. It has been a very nice experience, very inspiring talks, and seeing all your work and your research. And I also have include the institute website there, so you can, if you want to know more what we do. So we will be in touch, or you can be in touch with us. Feel free to write us. I want to thank you a lot to Sofia, Carolina, Jorge, and Yoann for your presentations. And yeah, the channel is open, and you can count on us. And thank you for sharing your knowledge. This I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
invitation. Very inspired presentation.
It was very, very inspiring. Very, really appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, your comments.
Thank you very much. It
Thank
was
you.
really,
Thank you,
really
Rob.
interesting.
See you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Bye
organizing.
Thanks.
bye.
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 Bye.